Hello and welcome to this fabulous edition of the Electronic Cafe. This is the episode where Mark and I get to meet another one of our heroes, the incredible Billy Currie. Yes, the Billy Currie that was in Part.1, Mark to Ultravox, that co-wrote two of the biggest 80s anthems, Fade to Grey in Vienna, was also obviously with Ultravox playing at Live Aid, and we asked him about that and what, the memories of that particular time. Just a brilliant conversation with one of the nicest guys you could ever wish to meet, a true hero for Mark and I. Sit back and enjoy our chat, as I say, with the legend that is Mr. Billy Currie.
Do you still speak to John at all, or do your paths not cross anymore?
Sorry.
Next question. Hey everyone, welcome to a massive moment for the Electronic Cafe. We are delighted to welcome a legendary musician, synth wizard, Mr. Billy Currie. He's on the Electronic Cafe. Billy, it's lovely to have you here. Welcome to the Electronic Cafe, my friend.
Brilliant. It's good to be here. Thank you.
No, it's really good to see you. Really good to see you.
Yeah, thanks, Billy. Thanks for giving up your afternoon. Where do you start with your stellar career? I mean, it's kind of, it's phenomenal, but we spoke to an old friend of yours at the weekend, Chris Payne, who took a very similar route to you into the world of sort of rock music, where you were classically trained and you came up through orchestras and you declined a place in the Royal Academy of Music, and then you ended up in rock music. What was that journey like for you?
It was, I suppose when I think back, it was quite fast, really. It was like from being 15 to 19. But before that, when I learned the violin, I think I was 11, it's funny, I'd got one foot in listening to that, experimenting with classical music, which was blowing my mind. And then the other side, I just love rock music and bands and dance music, actually. I was really into soul music when I was 16. And, I used to go out, that was that time before your time, like the mod thing, I used to love all that. Bit later, I got into 11, 12. I just love like bands like the Kinks, and I just the idea of a band, and of course the Stones and the Beatles were amazing. But even before that, when I was like about 10, I remember putting a show on just before I left junior school. How embarrassing! On the main stage and singing, before my voice broke. I actually had a decent voice before my voice broke, and singing songs, and that was the time. I know it's embarrassing to say, but like Cliff Richard, Cliff Richard, I-Class Baby. I used to like that because it was tougher, because I was embarrassed about it being a bit too lightweight. No, and I even put on a show. I've bored everybody to death on my website about this. I think I have. When I put a show in a garage just outside the playground in this junior school, put it on a proper show with a stage and seats, just in a garage, and it got in the local paper. So I've always been really loved music, but in a wide sphere, and not just classical music and not just rock music. And so when I, a bit later, when things started going a bit pear-shaped in my teenage years, like when I hit 17, I definitely got involved in the psychedelic movement, and that experimentation. And that just really, I was listening to just as much of that Spirit, Steppenwolf,
Yeah.
the bands that were around at the time. Spirit, because they introduced a strange kind of strings. Bands struggled with strings because it was expensive to put strings on in the background.
Yeah.
But I thought Spirit clinched it with a wild guitar solo, just having these really weird strings in the background. I was very interested in that. I was interested in weird once I got to about 17, 18. But I was still listening to Bartók and very much getting off on classical music as well. And I think just before I left, bailed out when I was 19, I was really even getting into a new American composers, trying to get into them, but didn't realize that I didn't actually like them that much. I was beginning to assert myself of what I liked, what I didn't like. And then I heard Terry Riley, so I chalked up the fact that keyboards could be interesting rather than being kept in the background, but there again, I love Pink Floyd, where they had these landscapes, spaced out stuff.
My sax is often solo. Sometimes it short circuits then. Sometimes it's a golden glow. My sax is invested in suburban photographs, skyscraper shadows on our car crash overpass.
Because I'd listened to electronic music versions of it from the 1930s and 1940s. And so I had an ear for electronic music, but they were struggling to present it because they would have an orchestra and then the electronic music bit would be a tape recording of electronic music. But anyway, I'm kind of going on a bit now. So that didn't really appeal to me that much. So it was always, I was being led more towards the excitement of bands, basically. Then I bailed out when I was 19. I got a place at the Royal Academy of Music and it was all set for me. I'd been leading the orchestra for 4 years. 4 years,
Wow.
In leading on the viola. This is where in the middle, But I did feel a little bit like it wasn't really my place. I felt like I needed I needed more attention. There was always this thing where I wanted to be more like the leader and right up front, because I had to give up the violin to get into music college.
Right.
I didn't start till I was 11, whereas the violinists were much better than me because they started when they were 5. Put a bit of a chip on my shoulder, but it was all laid out for me to go to the Royal Academy of Music. I got a place, and it would have been to continue studying viola with piano second instrument for the next 5 years. And that's your life mapped out. I would have come out just as an orchestra player, which would have been amazing because it's so difficult, some of the things you have to play. Right up at the top, knowing exactly what we're doing. Half position is a big thing for viola players. So I had an insight of what it was going to be like, but it would eat up my formative years, early 20s. So I felt it was a difficult thing to do, to just say no to this very amazing letter, It's like it had come down from God or something that I've got in the Royal Academy. I know I'm trying to put a picture. You've got to remind myself that I was just a working class kid. It was very difficult to say no to that. And I must admit, I can remember feeling a bit creeped out about it. I was experimenting quite a bit at the time, with the illicit substances, So it was a bit of a difficult time. So I just got offered a place in a band who happened to be up in Huddersfield at the time, rehearsing in this tiny little cottage. I mean, you couldn't make it up. It was so Yorkshire, in the valley. We'd got a Hammond B3 in this tiny little house. These lovely little houses around Huddersfield. I know it paints a strange picture because if you take people there, they'd probably think, well, what's lovely about this? I mean, it was, a lot of the houses were like dumped, really, like ex-weaver's cottage and stuff. But it was a lovely place to be. I had some great friends up there, and they just said, I knew the drummer, Wayne, and he was a real character. and he was trying to get me in the group, and it was a free-form sort of jazzy blues thing, you know, when you've got a Hammond in there and a sax player, and I just buggered off with them and went to the into the country in Norfolk, just outside Norwich, to a commune.
Right.
And that's how I started with getting into rock scene.
Someone stood beside me for a moment in the rain, a silhouette, a cigarette, and a gesture of disdain. I felt a dark door open, saw a sudden ghost come through. A spark leapt from my fingertip, and I knew it must be you. And you, the man who dies every day.
Because you've got some beautiful classical albums out, Billy, as well. I mean, your recent one, the Brushwork Obelisk, is a lovely album. And you can hear your classical flourishes when you look at your legacy. I mean, especially with Ultravox. I mean, some of the choruses and stuff.
Sometimes I find I drift away behind a distant smile.
Obviously, Tiger Lily, Ultravox 1, Ultravox 2, Visage. Yeah, you've been involved with some of the most iconic artists of the late 70s, early 80s. Mate, when Mark and I started talking about our conversation with you, we started looking at your output. And I think from 79 to 86, it was crazy. I mean, it was like you were in Visage, Ultravox tour, you toured with Numan rather, I think there was 2 Visage albums and I think something like 7 Ultravox albums in that time, probably including 1 live. I mean, that output from you then, excuse my language, how the fuck did you manage to do all that? I mean, it was just like, we were like, what? Because no artist does that now.
It was weird. Yeah, no one artist does that now. No, because it's more leaned towards live now.
Yeah.
On the road as much as possible. Whereas then that was all to do with making records and being on the road with, actually on the road as well. So it was both. That's what I mean. Wanted both as well.
We saw you on the road then.
Yeah, because at the end of 79, we beggared off to America because we'd got management, Morrison and O'Donnell, who were able to organise these things for us. So even at the end of 79, I remember going back up home to my parents' place in Huddersfield at Christmas, and then it was like a couple of days afterwards, I'm getting a cab to Manchester to go a fly to London to get a flight to LA. I mean, it was... So that's when we hadn't really got any success, but it was beginning to start. Yeah, and of course I did the tour with Gary Numan, which was a real bust for me because there's a lot of contrast at that time. I was being propelled because my backside very nearly hit the floor, and that's the thing that propels you. Yeah. Because when we came back from America in early 79 with Ultravox, that was quite depressing because I knew John was leaving. And there's a bad atmosphere in the group. Right. We're kind of experimenting with new stuff as well that John was going to record, like Touch and Go and Easily Quick.
Yeah.
And I felt a bit, I tried not to get too bitter about that, but it was like, what the hell's I recording that for? I mean, I've written some of it, so it was tough times, And I remember coming back, tell me if I go slightly off.
Mate, it's fine. This is magic. This is all gold for us.
Well, that's good. So I'll let you know this because we'd been dropped at the end of 78. The last gig was in the Marquee, and that's coincidentally when Rusty invited me and Robin Simon round to Billy's club. But I won't talk about that then. But that was exciting. And then so there's some scene starting, and we came back from America. And if I look at some of those things from YouTube now, it's almost like we were turning into a crazy avant-garde jazz band or something. The versions that were free-form stuff. It was crazy stuff. We were going in a quite different direction from what John ended up doing,
Somehow we drifted off too far, communicate like distant stars, splintered voices down the phone. The sun licked us, the smell of roses.
I come back to my flat in South London. I've been living there for 6 years, and I saw all these clothes on the floor in the garden. It was a big detached house in Herne Hill, bit of a dump, really. And I thought, what the hell's this all about, you know? And I was skint as well. It's thought, like, how the hell did I get here? And I was saying, what's all these clothes? And the landlord had come along and thrown everybody out. And the Irish guys, real characters on the top floor, I went to some of their parties, they'd said, resisted and got thrown out, all their clothes and everything. Heavy, you know. So I'm in my place and the guy turns up. I mean, come on, it was a bit heavy, but luckily he was okay with me when he eventually came round. So that must have been a few weeks later, because I'd been on TV with Gary Numan. Yes, sorry, because I did come back from America in about March, so I very quickly got involved with Gary Numan. And I think it's because I was on TV that he said, look, mate, be out in 2 weeks or else, you know. So that was it. I got nowhere to live. And I sort of went for, I thought, I've got to get a job. I'm absolutely skint. So I went for an interview with this punk poet. I can't remember his name. I wish I could. It was a nice name he had. Very appealing, quick. You couldn't forget it, but I've forgotten it. But I thought, oh God, I don't really want to do this. As it come to this, I didn't really want to do it. I was real backing band stuff, you know. And then because I'd been round to Rusty took me round to Billy's club at the end of 78, you know, and this scene was developing. I'd had a meeting with the Visage guys to become Visage. But anyway,
that's great. Hey, that's
how I ended up at Drury Lane to watch Magazine, and that's how Gary came up to introduce himself to me and said, "Do you fancy doing the tour?"
It's funny because we're hosting the Q&A with Rusty Egan tonight in London, so he asked us to do the question.
No, I saw. Yeah, you're going there, aren't you? Yeah.
We asked Midge about the workload at the time, and he said, you know, it was busy. He said, but at the time we didn't have anything else. There was no work. There's no mobile phones. We didn't have girlfriends. We'd signed a record deal. He said, and like our day was just the band and just writing music, and you know, we was able to do so much.
We were just pleased that we were able to do it. I mean, it was like that's what we wanted to do, and it was finally happening, and you don't complain about it. You just excited about it, you know.
So when you were doing that stuff with John, but like the Ultravox Mark 1, I mean, so Mark versus Mark 2. I mean, I love both, but I'm more Mark 1 because I just love the inventor, and obviously you did some amazing stuff afterwards. But when you made all that stuff, that Foxx, I mean, did you have any idea that even now it's so influential? Because, or was it at the time we're just doing something we love and we have no idea what impact it's having or it's going to have? Because most people I talk to our age, you know, that early stuff comes up as everyone just loves it, you know, and looks at it with so much sort of respect. I just wonder if you felt when you was making this stuff, you like, this is going to last forever, because it's lasting a lifetime.
It seems to be, doesn't it? Yeah, I know. I mean, it's amazing. I sort of forget about it, but I mean, it's a coincidence. Yeah, because I mean, I remember this question that you put. Yeah. I was thinking about the Systems of Romance album just a couple of days ago, and I hadn't thought about it for ages. How weird would it sound like if I played it? And I thought, no, it wouldn't be weird. It's just, you know, what are you thinking like that for, you know? And I was trying to remember in my head the running order.
Yeah.
I didn't quite get it right, but I looked at it because I got a couple of them wrong. I hadn't got it right where Blue Light was placed. But when I went through that, I thought, oh, you know, it is quite a full album of ideas.
Oh. Yeah.
And I'm proud of the middle section of When Someone Else's Clothes Again, and some of them do, whap. You know, that's the slider on the ARP Odyssey.
Yeah.
But that, I was putting that forward as a piece of a track in itself, but it ended up being a middle section. And that middle section of Wearing Someone Else's Clothes. And I was doing some interesting stuff with the ARP that I later on didn't really do, because I was doing that in duophonic. It's like consecutive fourths. Dum da do da blue wham. So I was going down an interesting track, and also for me personally anyway. And then the solo at the end of Blue Light again is veering on avant-garde jazzy, almost jazzy.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
You might get Dave Formula doing stuff like that, because I ended up working with Dave Formula, and his dad was sort of like a jazzer. But I mean, there's lots of ideas on it. But when we were doing it, we didn't think that. We just felt we were sort of a little bit cut out of the scene, and well, we didn't really even think that. Well, there was a slight arrogance with us. There always was a bit. And that's why we just blindly just got on with it. Didn't think about what other people were doing, you know. But it was always a little bit schizophrenic and a little for people to digest somehow as a commercial proposition, because it works better to sound samey somehow, you know. To have a certain sound. I know that sounds a bit of a...
No, you're right. I totally understand where you come from.
Yeah, but your answer is no. I haven't got a clue. It was a struggle, but I mean, it was a bit strange taking home an ARP Odyssey early 1977 when the punks had really broken.
Yeah, cool.
Over an ARP Odyssey, because I was looking at it with sneering disgust myself, and so it took some time to learn the ARP, because I'd got this thing that came with it. First of all, I thought it was only rich people could afford this, so I had to get over that. Why have I got it? But then there was another side of me, like, I've got it, bollocks, who cares, you know? I mean, Island Records paid for it. It was a lot of money. You get this thing where you're out to play it, and I was doing all that, and you put these sheets over the things, and you move the knobs and the sliders to it. You'd get a string sound or a clarinet sound. So I didn't go through that, not for very long, because once I got in with the band, I had to get on with it. You got to get on with it, because we were loud, impatient. I remember bringing it into the rehearsal room at Island Records, and they just had it going as loud as possible, going completely nuts with this volume thing opened up, so it just goes on forever. And I really thought, you know, you fuckers, you're going to knacker this, you know. But it just had to be baptized. It had to be baptized. To really go back into that time, now because it's so long ago, I'd have to really, it's a bit of a struggle, you know. But I quite like, I'm happy that I got so much synthesizer on the Ha 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 album, you know? And it's great to be with some guys that were up for it, you know, like John, you know, was really up for the synth, you know, right in the middle of the punk thing. I mean, there was no other keyboard players. There was Rugulator, who played like an organ, which I thought they were quite good. Don't know if you remember them.
It's right what you say. There was a lot of ideas in a short period of time on that Ultravox Mark 1 period. I mean,
not always necessarily developed,
No, but I mean, you can see it the way the albums developed, that you went very quickly from a kind of post-punky sound to, say, Hiroshima Mon Amour, which is kind of, you know, very electronic. And obviously John took it off solo into one direction, and then you went and became the Ultravox Mark 2. Do you still speak to John at all, or do your paths not cross anymore?
Sorry.
Next question.
I haven't. I haven't really. You know, I mean, there's been times, always over a period of like 10 years. Yeah, I contacted him in when was it? 1991, and he contacted me in 2000.
Oh, cool.
Contacted me in 1991, and 2010. So like a 20-year difference. So it's like, so not really, you know.
Okay, regularly every 20 years.
Yeah.
Looking out at the white world and the moon, I feel the soft exchange taking place, merging with the people on the brains, blurring my face and conversation.
So we mentioned this before we started recording, Billy, but I mean, for me and Andy, this is a real joy because it's an epiphany moment for both of us, because Andy Living Ornaments was a moment for him where he saw you on stage, and for me, my first ever gig was Ultravox Rage and Eden tour at the Hammersmith Odeon. I must admit, as a 15-year-old, I didn't realise there was at the time a Mark 1 Ultravox. So seeing you in the Mark 2 Ultravox and mixing your keyboards with the violin, viola, putting it through all the effects and everything. What you touched on earlier about not particularly learning instruments, but it was more invention and you getting your hands dirty, playing with it to get the sounds. I mean, I guess that was just literally roll your sleeves up, play with the instruments and try and get a sound out of it.
Yeah, try and get experiment with it. I mean, I did actually listen to The Ascent, which has just been released on the box sets. Yes. I'm putting it off, you know. Is it gonna be awful? Because I did have trouble with the violin. It's not an easy one to get out there in a rock band, and I was quite pleasantly surprised. I mean, I must say, I was quite chuffed. I mean, I played the violin a lot better then than I can now. No, I was quite nimble, and I had an MXR pitch shifter, and I had it set, and I had it in 4 settings. I think I had it an octave above, so right. And I had it a fourth before, fourth below, and I think one I used to have in consecutive augmented fourths for things like in Rage and Eden, just to get that strange effect. Because I think I was playing along in the track Rage and Eden then as well live to give me something to do, because that's amazing, really, that the name of the album, Rage in Eden, was a track that when they said, what do you want to do? I said, nothing. I mean, that's pretty, that is quite amazing, really. Because I'd been in a band and you give each other space. I was used to that. Most guys really would think, oh, I'll put something on anyway, just to make my mark, you know. So we were trusting. And when Midge joined, he was a little bit, when he first found out, oh, was that Chris Cross who did the beginning of Slow Motion on his EMS? Yeah. And he looked at me like, oh, I thought it was you, you know. And I didn't say anything, but I think he got the message that it's like whoever it works with, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, whoever works.
I don't have to defend my corner if he's good at it, you know. But you know, I was lucky. I didn't have some raving lunatic. I didn't have some kind of Frank Zappa on keyboard that was going to take over my life. So I did trust Chris. You know, I've been with him a long time.
Yeah. The first time I saw Ultravox live, and then when you played the violin with the effects and everything, I always thought that was guitar, but it blended so perfectly with the guitar. It was it was kind of a tone and a layer in the song, which was like, you know, brilliant.
That's interesting. Yeah. No, I mean, that's interesting for me to hear. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Midge was using a lot of flanging on his vocals as well, but he was using it on the guitar and phasing. It was at that time, early 1981, 80, people were using a lot of flanging and phasing, but we were getting in there quick in a more extreme way. Yeah. And also with this pitch shifter as well, which I had, which again, I was lucky because not many people could afford that. So that was a bit of a like, I know it's going to be new what I'm doing. But I mean, just listening to that little bit of The Ascent, I sensed the atmosphere. And it was a crazy atmosphere back then when we were doing stuff on Rage and Eden. We were a bit of almost like a performance art group, really. I mean, it was pretty weird, the vibe, wasn't it? Which I think's great. That's why I like it.
100%.
It's just such a strange atmosphere, you know, and expecting people to listen to bum, 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 but, you know, Warren's electronic drum going on and on afterwards for about 15 times. It just took me back to it when I listened to it.
Nice.
And people just going, what the hell's going on now, you know? And then to basically have the composure that Midge had, which is good, because everybody's flying on adrenaline when you're on stage, you know, to have the composure to start with a simple melody of Your Name Has Slipped My Mind Again, you know,
Yeah.
And I was thinking, bloody hell, I mean, you know, come on, you've got to give it to him.
The day seems to drag away. My speech is sparse and tends to slow. I wonder what happened to my friend today. Can't hear the words. Oh, your name has slipped my mind again.
And John was good at doing stuff like that. It was difficult because we were so schizophrenic. We'd do a massive, powerful track, stop, and we'd deliberately change the thing to as much opposites as we could. And I'd be starting almost a bit like Vienna with the simple ARP soft sound, you know.
Yeah, nice.
You know what I'm talking about. But when you do that in clubs, I mean, God, you can hear people say, "Oh, fuck off! What's this?" Whereas when you're at Hammersmith Odeon, you know, you can't quite hear that. I can just hear people going, "Get on with it." Yeah.
The turbine cracked up. The buildings froze up. The system choked up. What can we do? Please remember to mention me in tapes you leave behind. We still fight to photographs we had somehow. They made us sad, remembering the times we used to have. They made us cry. They told us that in our days, different words said in different ways have other meanings from he who says in our time. Give us this day all that you showed me, the power and the glory.
So that's it for another fantastic episode of the Electronic Cafe. I hope you're enjoying some of the stuff Mark and I bring out. We've got lots more great content coming your way. We'll be doing more hot stuffs, interviewing some more amazing names, and lots of great announcements coming soon. So keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. Also, don't forget, if you haven't subscribed to the incredible Blitz magazine, please do so. And so we're going to make, hopefully make a big announcement for you guys very, very soon. So keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. In the meantime, stay safe, and we'll see you next time on the Electronic Cafe. Bye-bye.
If you haven't subscribed, please do so, and we'll see you again soon. Bye bye.